You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and with my guest, Elaine McNish, who is one of the directors at Move Consulting Limited. And Move Consulting help organisations better understand physical activity and what it takes to help people, to get people to move more. Elaine's worked with a range of organisations, including the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy, Active Partnerships, our Parks and Buckinghamshire Public Health team. In the past, she has also worked with the Welsh National Exercise Referral Scheme and a lot of governing bodies and all sorts of things. If you want to know a little bit more, it'll all be in the notes that accompany this podcast, so do have a look. But for now, we're talking about... tell me a little bit about background and your interest in the field of physical activity.
Well, as you've sort of described, I've worked with a lot of partners, and those are more recent partners, but over the years I've been involved in the area of physical activity and predominantly health, if I'm honest. That's been the thread that's run through it. For, I suppose, I worked it out, it's just coming up for 30 years or so, which is a little bit scary. So lots of things have changed in that period of time. But the one thing that I suppose that I've had a consistent interest in, particularly since the development of the National Exercise Referral Scheme in Wales, has been that sort of referral signposting process around physical activity, and how do we make it as smooth as possible for participants and as integrated as possible, really, across areas.
And that's because, again, I've got over 30 years now in the industry, and my main thing has been the health-related side of it. I've done all the other stuff, but it's the health-related. And I think as we've got almost more opportunity to be active, people have got more confused and aren't quite sure what they need to do, what the guidelines are and what things are. And this is where, that signposting is so important, isn't it? It's something that is needed, but I think it's not taken up enough by people who would be doing the signposting. So just quickly then, why are we talking about physical activity rather than exercise?
Well, a combination of things. Since, I suppose, the traditional exercise referral offer came on board, there's been lots of changes in understanding and policy, I suppose. So we've seen the We're Undefeatable campaign, which started a couple of years ago, 3 years ago probably now, which has really pushed the message that physical activity is good, is safe for people with long-term conditions. And that was backed up by the consensus statement that came out last year, which again said that it is safe for people to be active. So that's the first area of it. We've seen changes in the workforce and broadening the skill set of the workforce. And then I suppose the other area is that we have seen that offer that exercise referral has traditionally provided, that gym-based offer, broadening out. And we definitely did that in Wales. I mean, we were offering gardening, golf, everything, and recognising that one size does not fit all. And some people really hate being in gyms. And actually, yes, you could design the most super duper wonderful exercise program for somebody, but if they don't turn up and do it on day 2 because they hate it, then you failed. So we've seen all of that happening over the years. And then recently we worked with Loughborough University when we were looking at potentially revising the exercise referral toolkit to try and understand what was happening out there. And people were saying, actually, this is no longer just about exercise referral, it's about broader physical activity across the board, and it's about opening up that offer more widely. So that's why we're talking about physical activity. And we see it as a pathway, because we're not talking about somebody just rocking up at the gym and going right, or rocking up in a sports club. We're talking about some kind of either referral or signposting, but most importantly, that there's some kind of behaviour change support to help them engage with that activity and to become active in the longer term. So that's why it's really deemed a pathway.
And it's a two-way thing, isn't it, as well? And I think, again, this is something that we really, really need to take on board, is it's a two-way thing. It's us providing that pathway, the signposting, but it's also that the person has the opportunity to ask, to find out, to I'm going to use the word research, but it's not really, but try things out. Because I think a lot of people, the minute you talk about activity, think about exercise and a negative experience that they've had in the past, or they're too old, they're too unfit, they're too big, they're too this or that. There's all these different reasons why people think it's not for them, and it's often tied into something negative that they carry with them. And what you say about that behaviour change support is so important, because we want people to create a habit, and actually they need the support to do that. And you said people turn up for a gym session, hate it, and never go back. And it's like, I tried exercise, it didn't work. Instead of, what else can I try?
Yeah, we're quite obsessed in our world of risk screening people. It's become a sort of, everybody's worried about the risk of activity, and it's still hanging over us. It's still something we're looking at. But what we're not so good at screening people is understanding the behaviour change support they need, because that can vary according to an individual. One person, it might be that they're used to activity and maybe they've had an illness or an injury and they're ready. They just need a bit of permission to move on, it feels like, and then off they go. But for someone else who has been long-term inactive, who have a lot of anxieties and concerns about being physically active, that support mechanism is vital and needs to be more probably intensive, for want of a better way, or longer term to make it work for an individual.
And this is where it's so important, and I mentioned this in the introductory episode, is one of my catchphrases, which is get to know your client, because you kind of need to get to know them in order to understand the type of support, behaviour change support, that they need. Some people want to be, right, this is why you're doing it, this is what it's good for, and they'll be like, right, I've got the facts, I'll go and do it. Whereas others, it's, is it for me? What do I have to wear? There are very different aspects that we need to talk about, and it's having those pathways where people can get the information they need at the time they need it. It's that sort of teachable moment, isn't it? That moment where they're receptive. So what are some of the challenges then in developing these pathways?
Well, we've talked about the whole area of risk, or I've started to talk about it. I could go on for a very long time about risk and screening. It is a real challenge, and it's a combination of things. Really, some of it is about the wariness of health professionals about ensuring that their patients will be safe and how we make sure that's the case. Some of it is just the natural fact that people are concerned and are worried, and everyone always thinks of the worst case scenario. But we know that the evidence says that it is very low risk, particularly if you're designing your programs correctly. You're starting where the client is at, or the patient is at. And I think people get obsessed with the right level of intensity of activity. And when we know from the research that getting somebody from doing nothing to doing something is going to benefit their health, you don't have to go straight into monitoring their heart rate or doing this or doing that. So as long as it's managed carefully, risk is minimal. But that's not the perception, and that's the challenge we have. So there's a whole load of work being done around that at the moment, trying to understand that and understand where that sits. So that's the first area. The second is having the infrastructure correct. That infrastructure covers everything from how do you refer or signpost people into opportunities, how do you manage the triage of them so that they are then signposted, supported to the right opportunity, and having the right people with behaviour change support training to be able to do that effectively and also provide that ongoing support. And then you have, how do you create that menu of opportunities? but quality control what those may look like. Because it's not just about people knowing the prescription, for want of a better way, of what that should look and feel like. There's also things, what we class as the softer skills, and I think that does it a disservice to call it that. But how do you actually work with clients who are terrified? Let's be honest. Yeah. And I mean, I always think back to when you and I were involved in, you were delivering the training for the National Exercise Referral Scheme. And you used to do this lovely little exercise where you just planted a seed at the beginning of the training, and you went, hey, I'm going to get you to sing a song halfway through here just to let you know. And you could see some people's faces going, oh my goodness, what's she going to do? And you came back to that and said, that's what it feels like for people walking through your door. So being able to reassure them is really important. But also, I think the other thing that I learned from that training, and I think we learned from the instructors, was afterwards, a lot of people were not prepared for how slowly and how gently they had to move and progress people. It's breaking it down into very, very, very small steps. So all of that's important. And then the last area I think is really important is around creating that connectivity and connection, which is vital to keep people coming back and keeping them adhering to these types of programs, but also not making them reliant on you. It's quite a skill. It's a balancing act, not making them reliant on you so that they're going to, that they will be ready to move on. And I think we used to set the scene that your job is to create independently active people after this, after they've had their 12 weeks, 16 weeks, whatever it is. So that's another area. And then the final part is how do we get the opportunities right? So if we really are going to create a more diverse offer, we need to think beyond the traditional local authority gym offer and start to engage and involve broader opportunities. So we've seen some of that happen already through walking schemes and things like that. But there is a whole volunteer workforce out there when a set of clubs and various other things who potentially could be involved and engaged in this and could provide a good offer. But we've not yet really, really exploited that to its great opportunities, really.
And interestingly, earlier this week, I was delivering some chair-based exercise training, just very basic chair-based exercise training to a project in a large city. And it's for a minority group who have mental health issues and things like that. And the idea is that the volunteers will be able to deliver some basic chair-based training within their community, within their locality. But more importantly, it's not some bright, fit, bouncy fitness instructor coming in and saying, let's do this. It's people like me helping me. And one of the things you actually said, and again, catchphrase number 2 of mine, is, we need to start where people are, because too often nobody is going to go overnight from doing nothing to doing 5K, but they might go from doing nothing to doing 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
that's an improvement. And we need to give people permission. I think we need to give people the education, if you like, to start where they are and build slowly. And you said, people were surprised at how little people could do, and that's fine. Whatever they do is building on that. And yet there's almost this expectation, we've got to do an hour. Well, if 5 minutes is enough, then start with 5 minutes.
My business partner, Craig, describes it as, if you ask the question, what is the best thing you can do for your health? It's what you do.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Yeah. It boils down to it. If you do something, it's better than nothing. So,
guys, if you want to hear more from Craig's coming in as a bit of a ninja activity person, activity by stealth. So we'll be talking to him later, because again, for me, the more we get people doing a little bit of activity throughout the day, the more they're going to benefit their health than going to the gym once a week or going to a class once a week. It's building up that incidental activity throughout the day. And then you don't need the gym if that's not what you want. If you do, great. But for me, talking about pathways, the gym or structured exercise is a big progression for a lot of people, it's not the starting point. And this is something that I know you're working a lot with some local authorities on, particularly musculoskeletal conditions and activity. So what sort of projects are you working on at the moment?
We're working on, in terms of physical activity pathways, I suppose I'm working with one project with Versus Arthritis, setting up classes in Essex. So that's sort of looking at, we've trained all of the recruited instructors in the area, and we've trained them all around behaviour change, and also understanding the condition and understanding that. That's just started this week, and we've had a really good start from the sounds of it. All the participants, we've got a good number of participants coming through, and all the instructors have been really buzzing from that. So that's great. So that's a kind of example of it on a local scale. I've done some work with Active Oxfordshire as well, looking at their current integrated pathway, Move Together, and how we can create a business case for that, because that is another challenge for people, is how do you find the funding to make these happen, particularly at the moment when funding is very, very tight. So we've been doing some work there, and we're building upon that, because we've been working with them and some of the other active partnerships in England to really try and understand what is needed to create really high quality physical activity pathways. So that piece of work is ongoing at the moment, but we're working with those partnerships to understand what they currently have in place and what is current practice. What tools are they using? So under each of the things I described earlier, how do you do triage? How do you do all of that, so that we can really identify what is current practice in the field? Where are there gaps? Where are the challenges that people are hitting blocks and things and need help with, so that we can start to map that into a sort of framework that would help people. So we're just at that first phase. We're hoping we'll be able to continue that work and get further funding to move that work forward once we've done that initial mapping exercise. But this is something I've been trying to do this for about 20 years now, because I recognise that, when we first developed the exercise referral toolkit, it was definitely needed at that point in time. Obviously, the world's moved on a little bit, but that is still the most downloaded resource from the NCSEM website, because people need advice and support from what we believe. Now, as I said, the world's moved on. We know that it's broader than just exercise referral. We know that a range of resources are needed to support that, and across the country. So hopefully this will help contribute to that.
And I think one of the issues as well, and this is where Wales got it so right, is what works in a rural area of Cornwall isn't going to work in an inner city. And this is, we need to have kind of a framework, but a flexible framework that really looks at who the population are. What are some of the barriers or some of the issues that are coming up, even at this early stage? What are some of the issues that are...
I think so. So there's a combination of things. One is trying to streamline what's going on, because a lot of areas because exercise referral schemes have kind of, particularly in England, obviously they're quite well coordinated in Wales, but they've kind of developed, not haphazardly, that's not the right word, but separately, I think, if you see what I mean. There hasn't been the integration of different schemes. And I suppose as we've seen more leisure services going to trust, they've developed their own projects and programs. And so there hasn't been that integration of it. So trying to create a single pathway because from a patient or a client perspective, I don't want to fill in 20 different forms or to be potentially put on 20 different things. From a signposting or referrer person, which scheme do I choose for my patient?
Yeah.
We want one pathway and one system that then makes it as simple and smooth as possible for people. But of course, that's quite a difficult thing to do when you've got 20 different schemes operating in your area. So that's one area that obviously needs to be looked at as part of it. The risk and the screening we've already talked about, so that's another area. And the consensus statement, although we hoped, and I think when it was produced would help with that. In a lot of areas, some people have become more nervous, ironically, about it. They're wanting some kind of guidance and support on how you ensure that you implement that correctly. So there's areas around that. And then the big one, I think, that will be is how do you quality assure if you're opening up that market and those opportunities, how do you quality assure what needs to be in place as a minimum standard to ensure that people will be safe and have a really, really good experience when they go to those opportunities? And that might include, education in some cases of some of the delivery agencies. Because we know that, we've seen the rise in sports, in governing bodies doing things like walking football, adapted sports and so forth. But it can be wider than that. I mean, when I worked on for swimming and we developed the whole pool approach through water well-being, it's not just about the education, it's about the wraparound experience. It's about, is it accessible? Is the marketing right? All of those things have to come into play to create the right opportunities for the right person.
And I think sometimes we forget that within the kind of health-related fitness behaviour change industry, we know why it's important, what it does. We know all of that. But I think a lot of the general public aren't as aware that they need information. And I know I was looking into some research into barriers and facilitators for physical activity for a particular long-term or particular medical condition. And something that kept cropping up again and again and again was a lack of knowledge, not just on what to do, but on why. Why is this going to benefit me? How is it going to benefit me? So, it's like you're saying, the marketing we need to inform but not preach. We need to kind of be inclusive, but not too vague about, everything. We need that specific information in order to capture the interest, but also, I'd like to X, Y, and Z.
It is a real challenge for people because the traditional marketing of our industry is lots of people, very beautiful people jumping up and down in lycra. And that's not the experience of that people are looking for, of the people that we're looking to support. They want to see people like them accessing it. So they want to see people like them. They want to understand what they're going to get out of it. They want to feel reassured. There's lots of research being done by the Richmond group of charities, and particularly Macmillan, around understanding what is it that people are looking for. They're looking for a tailored offer. They're looking for someone who understands them. They're looking for the marketing to reflect that. They don't like the word, they hate the word sport.
Yeah.
They dislike exercise, and even physical activity might bring them out in a sweat, and not in the right way. Activity, movement, things like that are terminologies that they are more comfortable with. So, we just have to be really careful about what we use in terms of language.
And building gradually, I think, is another thing, is you don't have to go from doing nothing, as I say, to 5K. You can go just for a short walk or a couple of stretches, something like that. And I think this is where I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I've trained gym instructors, personal trainers, referral, the lot. I can't tell you the last time I was in a gym for myself because it's not my thing. And this is where, we need to understand that for some people, the gym will be a progression as they develop confidence and a baseline of fitness. It's not necessarily where they want to start. So having a really joined up approach locally, knowing all the different opportunities that are available, from walking football to golf to aqua, whatever it is, but giving people a choice, I think, is so important, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we all have a choice. They have a choice whether to be active or not. But the more opportunities there are, the more likely they are to say, do you know what? Yeah, I'll give it a go. And if I don't like it, I'll try that next, or I'll try that. And it's like a box of chocolates, there's some that you try and you think, oh, not eating that again. Whereas others, it's like, oh, I wish the whole box was full of that. So, this is part of the pathway, isn't it? Is knowing everything that's around and making sure that we get to know our clients. We start where they are, but we're giving them the sort of choice that inspires them rather than scares them. So what are you hoping that's going to come out of the work that you're doing?
Well, see, I've always had at the back of my mind, as I say, I've been trying to do this for 20 years. I would love that whatever we produce and whatever it looks like, ultimately that is very useful. That's always helpful, so that people want to use it. That's always the judge of whether you've got it right or not. But ideally, I would also like to see it being integrated into policy areas, because that's my background has been sitting in policy. So, things like it being taken up by NICE and various other organisations such as like that. So if we can get it right, I would really love it to be deemed, this is kind of a blueprint, or this will help you deliver the blueprint of whatever it's going to look like. And we can't say until we've ultimately done the work, but that's my ambition.
And this is for referral schemes, community-based schemes, work-based, anything.
Yeah, our scope is really where somebody needs a level of support to be active. So that's critical. We're not looking at the whole physical activity world out there. We're looking particularly at the pathway. So where somebody is referred, signposted, or self-refers into a particular support. So they would get behaviour change support and then access to opportunities. Fixing, I've only got a few years till retirement. Fixing the whole system I think is beyond in that scope of time. But if we can start working on this, I'll be very happy.
It's like, when we talk about business, we talk about our mission is to do this. The vision is what we're hoping will happen in the future and that we're a part of. But it's kind of creating physical activity opportunity for all. And it does start with education, doesn't it? It does start with education, awareness and understanding, but also where the client is. And not, like you say, for a lot of people, the thought of becoming more active is quite scary. They're worried about injury, they're worried about risk, they're worried about, all sorts of things. And our role is to make sure that, we're giving them an opportunity to do something, ease them in. And for most people, appropriate supported activity is a lot safer than sitting around doing nothing in a way. It's certainly better for their health. My final question for you is, what's your favourite activity and why?
Well, I'm an outdoor swimmer, although at the moment it's more outdoor, run in the sea, paddle a little bit and get out again. It's a little bit chilly and I'm up in Scotland, so it's even more chilly, I suspect. But I love being out in the open air, in the seawater when I can, and also walking or running, anything that's outdoors for me. I'm like you. I'll go into a gym if I need to do something specific, but ideally I'd rather be outdoors doing something.
I'd rather be outside in the rain than inside on a treadmill even. I love the seasons and everything. And finally then, where can people find you? Where can people find out more about the work that you're doing?
So we have a website, and we're also on LinkedIn as well, and Twitter and Facebook and all the usuals. But our website is www.moveconsulting.co.uk. And on that, you'll be able to find a lot more about some of the projects we've been involved in. We also do podcasts and webinars as well. And there's a whole host of them. In fact, I think we spoke to you on one of them, didn't we? I believe.
We talked about setting behaviour change, actually, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so there's lots of... I'm like you, I'm very lucky to have been around in the industry for long enough to know some very clever, intelligent and important people in the industry. So we've been very lucky to attract some of those. And we also try and support people with when we find out things that are going on in terms of understanding policies and various things that are out there. So you can see a bit about our work, a bit about education and support that we can provide, and various other things.
Cool, lovely. And you've mentioned a couple of times the consensus statement, so I'll pop a link to that in the information about the episode, but also I'll put your website details on there as well, so that they're there. But if you find out more, as I say, Elaine's not just like me, been around the whole activity field for a very long time, but if it comes to sort of policy and things like that, then definitely is a go-to person, because that's something that a lot of people wonder about, want to know about, want to find out more about. So I think it's an area that will be growing. So everybody, you have a contact here, definitely. Thank you very much for joining me today. And I'm sure we will speak to you again about various things, because there's always things going on, aren't there, in the field of exercise, physical activity, fitness, the lot. So I'm sure we will chat again at some point. But thank you very much. And
well, thank you for inviting me.
Everybody else, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, then just contact me or contact Elaine, and we will do our best to answer them. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.